Good morning, everyone. Today we will finally get to use the sewing tools and materials that we have outlined how to use procedurally in the last week or so. In the image shown on the screen, you will be able to see some of the materials that you would use in this unit. And as we go through our activities this week, you'll see that we're going to go through the process of learning stitches and other techniques when sewing in a staggered step-by-step basis so that you aren't expected to learn all of it today and then master it all across the week. You'll take chunks of it, we'll master those chunks, and then when it's all said and done, you'll be able to utilize all of those skills to create a perfectly functional item or project based off of what you're trying to create. For day one, you are going to specifically be learning to utilize the supplies that we're going to use and how to kind of procedurally manage the things that you have in front of you. We are also going to focus today on learning how to thread a needle appropriately, as well as how to tie that threaded needle. For many, it's a very difficult task if you haven't ever become accustomed to tying knots and having them stack on top of one another. Once we've gotten through the supplies and the threading, then you'll go on to learning how to perform a straight stitch and just kind of practice and getting used to what it's like to sew on any type of medium, whether it be a small piece of scrap fabric. When we're doing our stitch practice and our learning type of activities, you want to be sure that you're sewing not on your felt. You do not want to be sewing on your project felt. That's like your good stuff. You instead want to be utilizing scrap fabric, or it could be a cut up old t-shirt or small sections that I have cut in the classroom or in your bags. There's many different things you could use as a medium for practice stitching, but please do not use your project felt for your stitch practice for any of the activities we do this week. Glad we got that over with. And then finally, once we get done with learning how to do a straight stitch, I'm going to show you how to effectively tie off a stitch, or any stitch for that matter, so that when you are sewing, you have stitches that are taut and are secure and do the job that a stitch is intended to do. Without a effective tie-off stitch being performed on the back end of a stitch, it's just going to pull out and unravel, and it's not going to last very long. So it's an extremely, extremely critical skill to learn. That is probably the most important one of the day, is learning how to effectively tie off a stitch, because that will be used at every end of all the stitches that you use. The next thing that we're going to focus on is what supplies you need or have available in your toolkits. So one of the materials you're going to have available to you are some cut up scraps of fabric, and there's many different patterns and prints. It's just leftovers of past products and things, but you're more than welcome to utilize as many of those as you need in order to practice your stitches. The next thing that you're going to find in your sewing kit is an envelope that is labeled Sharp Storage Procedure. Now, inside of that, you're going to find a lot of sharps materials, but we first want to emphasize for a moment on what that means. Like, what is a sharp and what is a storage procedure and why does it matter? So when you have sharps and things that are sharp and can cause harm to others because they are just of that nature, we have to be very careful with how we store and take care of and manage that material, because we don't want that to end up not here or in somebody's foot for that matter. So when you put something back in this is how it looks when you open it today, is exactly how it should look at the end of every single class day. No extra threads, no jumped up garbage. Everything is nicely and neatly encased within the sharp storage. Now, that means that at the end of class each day, you're going to be expected to unthread your needle, even if you had just threaded it. And it's going to happen. Unthread it, get some new thread tomorrow, and it'll be all good. The next thing is that you need to insert your needle through the square felt stick, and that's when I pull the example stick out for you. And if you look closely, you'll see how your hand sewing needle is carefully docked in that, and you've got your pins mashed through it as well. This is one way that you can kind of dock them. If it's still a little loose for you, you could opt to take your needle and go through one side, back through, and then back through again to the front. And then you have a slightly more sturdy pin through your felt. Now, this is how your sharps need to be stored. It is expected that this is how they go. I will be performing random felt checks, and it's got to be all together. Do not lose these 3 pins. We do not want those to be floating. The most important thing to remember is that up until this point, students have not had the opportunity or the expectation to take their materials home with them every day. So we have to be exceptionally careful when we're taking these materials and being sure that they don't get into the wrong hands or where they're not supposed to be for safety reasons. Now, inside of this, you had that felt stick with your 3 pins that you'll need later, and you'll be shown how to use those. You also have a needle threader. In the tutorials and in the breakout room activity that we had played, there was a video about how to utilize that. All of the tutorial videos for everything that you will see this week will be found in the same place so that you can quick reference all of those materials. The last thing that you're going to find in your envelope is a set of buttons. Based off of which class you're in, you may or may not explicitly be taught how to use those yet. They are there just for the sake of having supplies available and for extension purposes in the event that you're just one of those extra people that need something to do. All right. Now that's everything that's in our sharp storage. These things stay in here until they are explicitly used, and they stay here otherwise. The next thing you're going to find are some squares of felt. Now, all of the squares of felt were entirely 100% randomly assorted, cut, and bagged for the sake of full random. What is received in your bag is totally not my decision. I did not coordinate those things in any way outside of providing a spool of thread, which is the last thing that's tangibly really in your kit that you'll be using to sew with. I tried my best to coordinate the thread with whatever randomized stack was produced for each set. However, it is your responsibility to utilize the materials that are provided to you. And in the event that you just outright did not like or want those felt squares because they were the wrong color or whatever other reason, you're more than welcome to go and purchase your own sheets of felt to complete your projects with. There's a wide assortment of really cool felt patterns and prints that are available for less than 60 cents per sheet, truly. And if you go to Joann or Michael's, their sheets of felt are as low as 15 cents a sheet. And that's 2 of these is a sheet. So be mindful of that, and please feel free. You wouldn't hurt my feelings if you went and purchased your own felt materials. Now, the last thing that you will see in your kits, school at home learners, these are automatically in your kits. Face-to-face learners, these will be distributed to you as we continue to progress, is some templates that you will utilize for your project development. You won't have to, there's no set expectation for the project's outcome or how it is expected to look, but there are a lot of expectations for what skills are expected to be performed for each project. So I'm not going to tell you what it has to look like, what color, what the vibe of it has to be, but I am going to tell you that I expect this stitch, this stitch, this stitch, and I want these 3 things on that project. So I'll be very clear about those expectations moving forward. Just be mindful and ready for those things to pop up for you. Now, to what we're actually going to be working on today. The first things that you're going to have to do is learn how to thread a needle appropriately, tie a threaded needle, because sometimes, again, that can be tricky on the fingers, how to perform a straight stitch, and then how to anchor your stitch off at the end with an effective tie-off stitch. You need to master all of these things in the next 2 days, realistically. Tomorrow there will be an extra stacked stitch on top of these, but this is a phenomenal starting point. So for this day, you were going to spend today just threading it for the first time, tying it, practicing some straight stitch on not your felt, but instead some small squares of scrap fabric or a piece of paper if that's more available to you. Sewing on paper is a fabulous way to learn and get some skill built. And by the end of the day, you should have some of these fundamental skills that are absolutely critical to performing and completing any type of effective sewing project. For each of the classes, there is a set of tutorials that I have provided so that you can get the skills that you need and watch the video tutorial of me showing you how to perform each one up close and high definition for each of the classes. Now, both of them are slightly different. So the first couple of stitches are those fundamental things that are going to be similar for both courses, but the learning experiences of the experiential stitches, like the back stitch, a blanket stitch, overcast stitch, button stitch, all those types of things will be different for each of the courses. So you will access those materials through the hand sewing guides that are in Google Classroom, or you could save the link that this QR code gives directly on your phone as well, or your Chromebook, so that you can quick access these later on without having to go to Google Classroom, to the assignment, to the video, let it load, get the video, watch the video. You could just boom, boom. And that one's for skills. And this QR code that is now visible on the screen is the one for life and college readiness. Again, there are some minor differences between the types of stitches taught and performed in each of the courses. So please be careful that you are looking through the correct guide for your course. Now, before you begin and start utilizing your materials and practicing those critical stitches, my reminder to you as you go through today's task, you'll see many will forget this step. You need to tie off your stitches when your thread is between 3 to 4 inches long, no shorter. If it is any shorter, then you won't be able to tie off your stitch, and you're going to have to cut it off short and pull the stitch out and restart it. You need some thread at the end of your project in order for you to be able to tie it off and have it be taught appropriately. Good luck. Don't forget that you can definitely utilize those life and college readiness tutorials from this guide. In addition to the skills and career readiness tutorials on this slide, these will also be available within Google Classroom. Again, today we are solely focusing on learning how to thread a needle appropriately, how to tie the end of a threaded needle, perform a straight stitch, perform a tie-off stitch. Oh, I put typing in that. I need to go fix that. Whoops, sorry, you guys. Be sure that you utilize the supplies appropriately and investigate the materials that have been provided to you and the expectations for using them. And that's how we end out our morning. Please let me know if you need any questions. I will be live on Google Classroom all week long with my tutorial station, a high def close up, so that hopefully I can give you a higher quality rendering of some face-to-face tutorials in the event that you're just really struggling with the video tutorials provided. Good luck, happy stitching, and have fun learning something new.